Folks, we are live. Welcome to Talking Crit. As you can tell from my background, I am in the Poconos, head back to New York tomorrow. With me, stage whatever, is my once a week work spouse, Bad Mike Battalato. And holding the show on their shoulders is none other than the one and only Jim Kitchen. This is your panel for tonight. Don't abuse
This
it.
is this is our post game hole show. So Jim's gonna be front and center first. We're gonna talk about game hole, and we got a few things to throw out there. You can probably guess what it is by what's going on in the community. You could probably guess a couple of things we're gonna talk about, but we're gonna talk. Jim is gonna. I missed my first game hole since 2019, Jim. I was really I had to do it. It was something that had to be done, but I didn't want to miss it because I really enjoy my time at Game Hole and I enjoy helping in the auction. And I just feel like, you guys made a lot of money at the auction, but I felt like I could have made you guys more. So I just feel bad about that,
Well, I mean, first of all, you were terribly missed, Mike.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
It's one of those things where it's interesting because you weren't there, a couple of other folks weren't there, and your absence was absolutely felt. Bill and I and the others who normally sort of volunteer, very, very, very busy trying to make sure everything went right.
I enjoy helping a lot. I mean, not just because you get to handle some of the artifacts of gaming that are just absolutely amazing, because Alex does have a really, really amazing auction. But yeah, you're right. It's just cool because it's like, it's you, me, Bill, Rick Mites, Alex. I mean, I don't know, whoever the 4 or 5 people that are up there. And it's like us against the world, right? We're just there. We're gonna give you all this kick-ass stuff, and we're just like dishing it out. It's awesome. It's just an awesome feeling.
So I'll talk to a couple things and try to, first of all, let's talk about the auction. So it is the Scott Brand Memorial Auction, collector's auction at Game Hole, and so Scott Brand was an important part of the RPG collecting community for quite a while. He had a collection that was just spectacular. He passed away way too soon. He is survived by a couple of sons who every year attend Game Hole and are at the auction. I said to somebody the other day that this is the auction I sweat the most. This is the auction that of all the ones that I work, it's the one that I really, I try to make sure I knock it out of the park. And that's because Scott Brand's 2 sons are in the audience at the back of the room. Scott's widow, the boy's mom was there, as well as Scott's grandson that he didn't get a chance to see.
Oh, wow.
And this is tough, right? This is the kind of stuff that really sort of brings home. You're not just talking about somebody who's somebody on paper, but somebody you actually physically knew. The Brand family were incredibly decent. They're always very nice in their comments, but this year they were especially generous, and that's the payment I get. That's the reward I get, and it was amazing. We had some incredible things that crossed through. We had some pretty uniques, pretty rare items. We had a couple of white boxes. Okay. We had an RPGA artist portfolio that sold at a very, very decent price. I think $2,500, which is probably a little light. So that was very well bought by someone. We had a 3rd printing wood grain box set that sold for $13,000. And that's a significant step. The Heritage auction that closed on Friday, my understanding is that sold at 12 with a buyer's premium of 25% on top of that. So I think we might have seen the highest price realized for a 3rd printing wood grain.
For reference, at North Texas, we had a 3rd print brown box about a little over 10 years ago. It sold for $3,000. That shows you how collectible that. And that was, at the time, that was a lot of money. 3,000 was like, wow, 3,000 for a 3rd print brown box. And yeah, these things are just going one direction, aren't they?
We had a lot of good stuff. We had a seller who tried to put in something moldy, which we told them no. But I wish I could say I was surprised. I'm not. We had some of the TSR advertising posters that came through, a lot of great monochromes. And so I think again, it just shows that the market continues to go up and up and up. We had an online bidder versus an in-house bidder for the wood grain, and when you have two people fighting over something, you absolutely get an auction. There's no question of that. I think we had 107, 120 lots, somewhere in there. I don't keep track the way a lot of other people do. I just am there for the go round. We had a Dungeon Master's Guide shirt. One of the ones that was in the back of the Gateway to the second Gateway to Adventure catalog. So it was well loved, pre-stained, pretty faded out, but it was one of the original TSR shirts, size large. We had a copy of Brimstone, the Tracy Hickman continuation effort. Very nice copy. It sold for $2,000. We had something for everybody, and I guess that's the thing I should say is that we talk about some of the larger numbers, but there's something for everybody. We had a large number of bidders who took home items that I would say were well below $200, and so again, I say if you have a slice of the collecting market, if you have a slice of what you're looking for, there's something for everybody at these auctions. You don't have to try to save up to just buy a $13,000 item. You can find great joy in other things. I only bid on one item, and the seller, of course, had a reserve that was frankly outrageous. I was the high bidder at a little less than half the reserve. Interestingly enough, that seller did not come up to me after the auction to try to work out a deal. They just left.
Really?
Good for you. I wish you all the very best. So it was a good time. Now, Gamehole as a show, I'll talk to that. All the vendors that I talked to were just turning and burning, selling a lot of stuff. I only bought one thing this year. I'm an old West miniatures guy. I'm working on a small town, and I bought a building. But I saw some of the folks that are usually there. The Jeff Easley painting was bought by Bob at Chimera Hobby Shop, which is the first time Bob has waded in to buy something like that at the auction. It was great to see. Saw a lot of familiar faces. The sketches were there with Dynamaps, their sort of magnetized sticky thing.
Oh yeah.
And they sold out of everything. They sold out of all of their stock by Saturday. So, I mean, that's a pretty good deal. I think Gamehole is one of the best run conventions that you can go to. It's the next evolutionary step of something like North Texas. It's a large enough venue that you're not crowded. It's a large enough venue that you're not stepping on people. It's busy. The food trucks are great. It's easy to get to. Alex won his battle with the Allegiant Center, and parking is free. Nobody has to screw around with coming and going through the little kiosks and being shaken down for money. Alex runs a tight ship, and it shows. And it was just great. A couple of the hotels around it have been renovated or undergoing renovations. Heard a lot of nice things about the hotel that's connected to the convention by a walkway, and I think that was good. Mike, I did pitch an idea to Alex that you and I are going to do a couple of events next year, and I think that's going to go well. I think we're going to try to have a panel seminar on collecting with a number of collectors to sort of talk about the highs and lows and the basics of the things that we talk about here. And then the other idea that I've pitched Alex is essentially like a bit of an antiques roadshow where somebody can bring something in and we can talk to them about it and tell them what they've got and so on and so forth. So it'll be interesting to see how those ideas develop over the course of the next 6-8 months. Gamehole is a convention I don't want to miss. I think going forward, I'm not going to miss. It's a great show. It really is. It's a fabulous show. There's a lot of Call of Cthulhu at the show. I heard a lot of people talking about it. There's a lot of role playing in general. I haven't done a deep dive into the event catalog because I knew going that I wasn't probably going to play. I needed some time to just sort of hobby myself, and it was good. I saw a lot of familiar faces, saw a lot of first timers who were just simply blown away. But it was a great show. It really was. You're sorely missed, Mike. Eric.
I had without going into too much detail, there was a lot of stuff going on here that I really had to be here for. My wife, I will mention that she told me to go. She said, you need to go. All your friends are going. You have a great time there. It's your favorite con, blah, blah, blah. And I wouldn't have enjoyed myself, Jim, because all the stuff that she had going on, that we had going on at the house,
Sure.
that just everything hit that week. And I wouldn't have enjoyed myself because I've been thinking about, oh God, I left my wife by herself and she's got to do all, deal with all this stuff. But she was awesome. She was like, no, you go ahead and go. I know that that's your favorite con, and Jim's going to be there and all your buddies. And so I was like, yeah, I know, but she knows how much I love helping at the auctions. I really like helping at the auction a lot because it's an auction done the right way. I'm not saying anything about any other auctions like Gen Con, whatever. Everybody has their pluses and minuses, right? But the auction there, first of all, it's for charity, which is great. Every year they pick a charity, which is awesome. Alex does a very generous commission on stuff. I mean, more than North Texas. I mean, we can't, we don't give that good a commission. So if you bring stuff there to sell for yourself, you're going to get a great commission. If you donate stuff, it goes for a great cause, and there's always a great cause. And usually Alex will pull a couple things out of his collection that he's got, extras of. There's always somebody there that's going to donate something. And I don't know what the charity was this year, Jim. If you might,
I think it's usually for the foundation that Scott Brand's kids.
The Scott Brand Foundation, yeah, and that's great because over the years they've had a lot of different charities, but that's one that's close to us because we all knew Scott. Scott is a great guy. He's one of those guys that you will never hear anybody ever talk negative about. I mean, nothing. Just a giving guy. Donated stuff to North Texas. Donated stuff to Gamehole. He was just a great guy, and so it's awesome that his kids are are making his name live on with this, with this fund. And I just love the auction there. And it's just the right amount of, okay, we got to be serious because there's some good stuff here. And we're just going to mess around because we know everybody here. We know who you guys are, and Jim's got to pull out the knife fight in a phone booth once or twice. And, I'm always waiting for that one. That's one of my favorites, not knife fight in the phone booth. And then I always like the beginning speech where if you want to get a bargain, you need to get on out of here. Jim shows them the door. There's the door.
That's right.
See you later.
Kids get out of the pool.
Somebody in the and so it's like being around your buddy. It's like being around a bunch of your buddies. But and it's not really contentious, but there's people that are kind of giving each other the side eye as they bid.
At one point on Saturday, I had 3 people sitting next to each other bidding on the same item, and that is a heartwarming experience, right? Because there's all this vicious side eye, right? And you're like, wow, you guys strapped badgers and started hugging each other. This is great. I love this. This is fun.
The best time is when somebody shows up that's new in the community, or maybe they don't show up for conventions very much. Right. Nobody really knows who it is, and they start bidding. And everybody's like,
"Hey, wait a minute." Well, that's my story. Mark Greenberg wasn't there, but that's how I met Greenberg. Is in 2010, I showed up at the Gen Con collectibles auction, and Mark was trying to win a TSR press kit, and all the other bidders had dropped out. And as the hammer was coming down 1-2, I stepped in. I started bidding. And I beat him. And as soon as it was gavelled, Mark got up, ran around to the back where I was sitting and sat down next to me and said, "Hi, I'm Mark Greenberg. Who the hell are you?" And I mean, we've been friends ever since, right? But he grilled me like, "Are you on the AKM?" "Yes." "What's your name?" I told him. He's like, "Why? I don't remember any of your posts." "Well, I'm sorry about that. That's a Mark problem, not a Jim problem." Somebody said Gen Con sucks. I think you really do have to remember that each auction is fundamental.
It's different. Gen Con, yeah. And Jim knows this.
I work all of them. I work all of them, and I can tell you, we'll talk about Gary Con a little later tonight at the very end. But my convention season sort of ended with Gamehole Con, and it's great because it's the one I feel the most pressure because of the brand connection of the brand family connection. I go into that with a lot of I stumbled at first this year, and then I managed to get in my groove and everything was fine. but it's very it's a ringer, right? Because it is a lot of heavyweight collectibles. You want to realize great prices. I don't think Kurt Gould, the big collector from Chicago, sold off a number of things, and I think he was very happy with the prices realized on everything. His monochromes were bringing $200, $300, $400 depending on condition. But my season sort of kicks off with Gary Con. Next year, I'm adding Wizard Con. I'm supposed to be going to Fort Wayne, Indiana in May. So let's see. It's next year's schedule for me is Gary Con in March, then Wizard Con in April. Then I'm going to go to the second. I've been invited to the second DCC Goodman Games convention in Fort Wayne in May. Then I've got North Texas in June. Then I've got Gen Con in August. Then I'll have Gamehole in October. And I could very well, and that doesn't include, I've had some people reach out about doing some online stuff, doing online auctions for a couple of folks for charity, which I'm always amenable. If somebody needs, I'm glad to do that. I'd rather help raise money for somebody than spend a Friday night watching TV.
Yeah.
And so it's good work. It's hectic work. It's also exhausting. And I was doing all of this on a bum knee. So this is the greatest episode of the show ever because I am well medicated. And it's a
beautiful thing.
Took out 6 cc's of fluid out of my knee yesterday. I've been ice packing and wrapping and laying around.
Is that why? I was wondering why you had fluid drawn. Is that why? Because you had to stand up all day?
Well, something in my knee popped about 2 weeks ago. It went pop, and that was bad, and it didn't want to hold weight. And then a couple days before Gamehole, it popped again. And so if you saw me at Gamehole, I was schlepping around in a leg brace and so on and so forth. I should have probably not been schlepping around, but between Saturday and Sunday, I did more damage. So, I went to the doctor yesterday, and I have an ortho appointment tomorrow morning. This is going to be awesome.
Oh, that's always
fun times.
It's just great.
I have 2 stories real quick. I have a knee story. I bent down awkwardly a couple years ago, and I felt a pop, and I tore my ACL, but not all the way through it. So when I finally got to the doctor and he examined it last year, he said, "Yeah, you're going to wait till you're 65 and you have Medicare and go ahead and get this operated on." I'm like, "What am I supposed to do until then?" He goes, "Well, you just don't squat and don't put pressure on it, this and that, and it should be fine. It won't tear all the way through." He goes, "I'm just trying to save you money here." He said, "We could do it right now," and I'm like, I am pretty cheap. Yeah, well, I'll wait. So I've been sitting here for 2 years with a partially torn, and I've learned to get around it. I don't squat and I don't put pressure on the knee, but yeah, I got 3 more years. I'll have that thing. 2 more years, I'll have it operated on. And then I wanted to tell you a story. It was the when I met Guppy, Steve Getty, for those who know, a good friend of ours. He was at the North Texas convention. I'm going to try to do a Bill imitation, or my Bill imitation, and so he was standing in the back, and so we're all auction stuff, and something very rare comes up, and Guppy starts bidding, and nobody knows who he is. It's his first year I went to there. And Bill is kind of in the front, and he does this.
Yep.
Because he needed this. It was one of the items he needed for collection. So he does the Bill.
He does the slow turn.
Yeah.
Who would dare to bid against me?
And Guppy won it. And then after that, I saw Bill did a Mark Greenberg. He went up there and goes, "Hey, I don't know who you are. who are you? You won. Congratulations on winning this extremely rare item. I don't know who you are." And so
I can't help but notice that you usurped me. I'm curious how you think you can get away with this. Yes, it's always a
and so since that I think Bill may have found a copy of the item, but he might not have. But if he did the typical Bill Meinhardt thing and downplayed it after that, like, well, it's not a really important item. It's just something I needed for my collection. I'm like, just keep saying that, Bill, and it'll make you feel better. But no, that was our introduction to Guppy too that year at the auction, because he was bidding on stuff and winning and outbidding everybody. And everybody's like, who does anybody know who this guy is? Does anybody know? And he was Guppy. And so now we all know Guppy and we all hang out. Matter of fact, I had lunch with Guppy this week because we were both feeling sad that we missed. We had CulverCon. There's one Culver's in Dallas,
Nice.
and he posted a picture of it. He tried to find the weirdest game he had and acted like we were playing it at the table and playing dice and staring at a called Bob.
I thought it might be Witch Mountain.
It's a horror
it
comedy.
would be Witch Mountain.
Oh, please.
Well, no. that would have been good. That would have been, but he brought Bob, and so I'd never heard of Bob, and apparently it's a horror comedy game that I don't know very much about it at all. I actually had in my car, I had a copy of Hunter's Planet, which is also kind of a comedy sci-fi game. So I almost had a picture of that, but that was our getaway. We spent one day for about 3 hours talking about how sad we were to miss Gamehole.
Well, what you need to do is you need to find a couple of really great games like that. You need to find the old Yaquinto Attack of the Mutants, which is a great.
I've been looking for a good copy of that for years, Jim. Actually, no, I had it at one point. I don't know what happened to it. I haven't seen it in years.
I had a copy and I traded it off, and I've regretted it ever since because it was just a great cheesy little game. But it's a fun
little game. Yeah, it's fun. I need a nice copy of that. I do not have a nice copy of that. But
the Milton Bradley game I need to get a copy of that I had as a kid was the Bermuda Triangle with the mysterious cloud that went over and rotated and sucked up ships and so on and so forth.
Gosh, that's one I haven't remembered in a long time.
And I had figured out the best way to cheat. My grandparents were furious because I figured out that, of course, the way it operated was magnets. So what I did is I reversed the magnets in my ships. So when the cloud went over, it didn't pull them up; it pushed them away. And my grandfather played once with me and was like, "I'm never playing with you again." I'm like, I don't know what you mean.
Do you remember a board game back in the day? It was like it was the Titanic, and it was a ship, and it would sink.
We all missed whatever it is.
Yeah, Mike, you froze. I thought it was my end.
Oh no! Do you remember a game called it was like something about the Titanic, and it was a ship, and as the game went on, the ship started sinking.
Vaguely,
and you had to run out of it.
Yeah,
and so we got a lot of. So we had the habit of basically. Changing up our games. We would add stuff, to make it more fun. And so, of course, as you're trying to get out of the Titanic, you can shoot and kill the other players. Of course.
As one does.
So it wasn't just trying to escape the Titanic. It was trying to escape the Titanic and get away from. Yeah, because there's only enough room on those boats, right? There's not.
I can't afford to do a spit take on my laptop. All right, I'm just
That's
saying.
great.
We redid Wilderness Survival was another one. We had a scenario where we were all bank robbers. We were all bank robbers, and we all had a portion of the bank robber money. We split up at first. You put everybody a different part, and then you try to get across, but also you're trying to kill the other bank robbers and steal their money too to get across the most money. So that was one of the scenarios. So we were changing up games even back then. That's why we love D&D so much, because we're like, you can do anything in this game. We're already doing that with board games. We were making board games our own. We were owning those bitches. We were saying, look, board game, we're going to do this to you. Where I know you're supposed to be played like that, but we're going to do this.
Violent
and
little
that
bastards.
Wow, man, it took a dark turn there.
But that was the Wilderness Survival was great too, because everybody had a pistol with 6 bullets in it. And we had some crude rudimentary system where you rolled a 6-sided die and one you shot. I can't remember. It's been a long time, but that was our Wilderness Survival. And Titanic was, I don't remember, but I just know that you could kill the other players trying to get off the ship.
So we got tired of Risk really quick after a few weeks in the summer, and our rule was if you had the card with the territory, you could nuke the card. And if you wanted to cross in and we marked it with a penny, and if you wanted to cross an irradiated zone, it would cut an army in half. So it would go from 20 to 10. And the wild card gave you the ability to nuke anywhere on the planet. But man, if you held Kamchatka or Alaska, you could pretty much not worry about your back, somebody coming around.
You're just nuking those straits. You're nuking the straits.
Or if you had the card, another player could bribe you and you could play the card at any point in the game. You didn't have to wait for your turn. You could just drop the bomb whenever. And boy,
do you remember that There was a Dragon magazine back then that had rules for nuclear risk. Do you remember that
No,
one?
I
Jim?
don't.
I don't know if you guys remember.
Oh.
Yeah, we use those rules because we had one too many fist fights over the results of a risk game, and I thought this is going to make it a little more fun. And it did, because you can just drop nukes in the middle of your risk game. But there was an early issue Dragon in the 30s or 40s, I believe, that had rules for nuclear risk, and it plays quick, and it's not one of these 5-hour games, because people start nuking about halfway through. And the thing is, nobody wants to be the first one to nuke, because once you start nuking, then you get allies against you. Then everybody's like, oh, that's how we're playing. You're going to nuke. Oh, okay. Well, here we go then. And so if you ever get a chance, you look at some old Dragon magazines, I think it's just called Nuclear Risk.
I'll look it up. I don't remember that.
It's issue 34, February 1980.
I was right, the 30. Well, that would make sense. The first issue of Dragon magazine was 34.
The rules were titled "Feel Like Risking Everything. Add thermonuclear tension to a classic game."
Wow, my memory is so good. No, my first issue of Dragon was 33. 34 was the first I bought. Got a subscription. 33 was off the newsstand. 34 was the script. So yeah, that's why I remember that. I guess
my first,
because I devoured
45. It, right? My first issue was 45. I bought 40, and I bought 40, and my grandparents got me a subscription, and it kicked in at 45. But you were a little ahead of me in the game.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, the Divine Right cover.
Isn't it amazing how we all remember our first issue of Dragon magazine? Mine was
crazy.
Mine was 66. Then I bought 65 afterwards. And then 69 on, I had to get 67 and 68 as back issues. Yeah, no, that's scary.
Googly, we're choosing to ignore your question there. We're not, there's no Witch Mountain expansions and something.
I'm just, come on.
Unless somebody wanted to do one.
No, moving on.
It could be open. Is it under an open gaming license?
No.
You're a sucker for punishment.
Nobody can. There is nobody on earth that owns the rights to that stupid game. Yeah, no, I think it's wide
nobody
open.
That's willing to admit it is probably
no, not at all. Not at all. Well, I get you had a good time, and I guess you saw a lot of people, and that you. Oh, I want to ask you a few questions. Now, if you don't know the answer, understandable, because this is how did the Wardens of the Eastern Marches stuff go?
I didn't play in it. I heard about it. Alex did a special bound version of the book that was a one and done, and that went up for sale at noon on Saturday and vanished. And so it's the new official campaign, and everybody was very, very excited about it. But I got a copy, but I did not play in it. So I was a little disconnected from a lot of the stuff because I was trying to nurse my knee and also.
I figure. Let's just say that we may have the marches at North Texas next year. We've already talked to Alex about it. Excellent. So just letting people know that it seemed like it was a really cool idea, and I know Alex's stuff is always going to be good, and it's always going to be quality, and I talked to him a little bit about it, and I like the whole concept. So.
Oh, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, it's basically a play. For those who don't know, it's a play league that they're not using. What's their name anymore?
Adventurers League.
Yeah, they're not using Adventure League stuff anymore. They had issues. There was issues with that, and Alex, as Alex will do, decided just to start his own.
Yep.
We're gonna do our own thing, which is great. For everybody that complains about something WotC does. So very few of us actually go there and say, well, we're just going to do it ourselves.
I'll fix it myself.
Yeah, I'll fix it myself. And I think I can do better, and I can do better. And that's why I love the OSR, because you had a lot of people out there going, I don't really want to play 5E or 4E or whatever's out there, or 3E. And I think I can do it better. And a lot of them did. And I think this is Alex saying, I don't really like the play league that WotC has going, and I think I can do it better. And from everything I heard, it sounded very positive. The reviews are very positive. So I'm interested to see what happens with this. It's a lot of work because I believe they had to write 10 adventures.
Yes.
And that's nothing easy about that, having to write 10 adventures, because when you're writing tournament adventures, you're not writing the same kind of adventure like
Right.
you or I or anybody would if you're just writing for a one shot or a campaign game. You have to look at certain things writing adventure, and I'm not good at it, and that's something that I would never be good at. So a lot of props, those guys having to write 10 adventures and make them all work around the table. I'm interested in hearing from anybody that played in it. If anybody here played in it and you want to IM me and let me know about it, I'm really interested in it. So
what was the other questions you had, Mike?
Oh, the new hotel. So for years and years, the Sheraton was connected to the convention center, and I stayed
in the Sheraton. So it was a Hilton. The one that's next to the hotel that's connected with a covered walkway,
right,
is a Hilton hotel that is now the Hilton Spark.
It's the Spark. Now I stayed in there many times, and I will tell you,
it was a dump.
It was not. Thank you, Jim. It was. Jim said it, so I'm just going to roll with it. It was a dump. It looked like it was decorated in 1979, and it hadn't been touched since.
Pretty much.
And the rooms weren't bad. I mean, you stayed there, it was okay, but it had not been updated.
The staff were nice, but the hotel was
an absolute dump. So the big news was that it was getting a gigantic renovation this year. Yes. And as you said, it was becoming a Sparks. Did you happen to go in it and see what it looks like?
I heard nothing but rave reviews from everybody who stayed in it. It's just gone through this massive review. It's just gone through this massive renewal, and everybody was raving about it. So it was the one that you thought was a Roach Motel, but wasn't it bad? It's now supposed to be just top of the line.
Wow. That's good then. That's really good.
And what used to be the Sheraton, which is sort of a little ways away, that's now a Marriott, and it is in the midst of its refurb now. And then I think my guess is that there's been some leverage on all of the hotels to get them back up to snuff a little bit, because
they have to up their game. Yeah, they got to up their game.
Yes.
And it's not just, look, I think Alex has said the Game Hole is the largest convention they have in the city of Madison, but they also have Badger games there. And whenever you have a game there, it pretty much fills the city up also. So it's probably time for those hotels to up their game and to, really make those places better.
And with no knowledge of what's going on behind the scenes, it's very easy to essentially say, hey, we could be losing convention. We could be losing out to having conventions in this place by not having a venue with hotels that are competitive and so on and so forth.
And Milwaukee's just an hour away, and obviously Milwaukee's a bigger city than.
And the city could subsidize it, could give them incentives to get it done, and so on and so forth. So I'm not surprised. That entire area, frankly, needs a bit of a refurbishment. You've got it's one of the state agencies that actually has a very large building across the street, sort of to the west. But there's all that area needs a little bit more food. It needs a little bit more. It needs to be massaged. So, and I think they're on their way to doing that.
That's one thing. The location of North Texas, the Marriott. I love the hotel. I love the people running it. You're in a bit of a food desert, which really sucks.
Oh yeah.
And that's one of the reasons we go in really, really heavy for food trucks. Oh, and the other question I was going to ask you. So how did the new food truck situation work? Because last year it was the lines were really long because Alex was limited in the amount of food trucks he could have. One of the things he worked out with this new deal was more food trucks this year, apparently.
I saw, to my eyes, it seemed like almost the same amount of food trucks. So if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, Alex. I'm certainly not trying to say otherwise. But I would say that the lines were moving. I never hit a food truck at 12 o'clock because I wouldn't hit a food truck at 12 o'clock. But it seemed to me like everybody was getting food and moving through pretty quickly. I did hear people complain about $3 and $4 Cokes or whatever, and $8 slices of pizza from the venues inside.
Oh, yeah.
But if you're going to do that, you're going to do that. So
it's kind of a universal truth that if you have a convention center, the food inside is going to be expensive and not very good.
It will be food. It is technically food, yes.
Technically food, and it's going to be way more expensive than anything you've ever paid money for.
Yes, but it seemed to go very smoothly. Alex Alex knows what he's doing. He's got all the cylinders are firing the correct way. I mean, that's
Well, that's good. Yeah, I'm glad that, like I said, that we complained for years, and I know Alex complained for years about the old hotel that became the Spark because, it's where they used to put all the special guests because it's an easy walk there if the weather's bad. Because we've been there years when it snowed, rained, and it was easy just to walk there. But my God, I stayed there many times, and look, I'm not going to complain about where I stay, whatever. But I told my wife has only stayed at the Sheraton while we've been there, and last year, the year before, I said I want to show you where I stayed the last few years so you can see how much better the Sheraton is. And we walked in, she started laughing. That's how. Walked into that one big area with the TV and all the mismatched couches and whatever, and she just started laughing, and I was like, "Yeah."
So
this is where we're
there's
at.
a bit of a raging discussion right now in the chat about ham radio license, and so I want to just mention real quick, those of you, Ty included, the app you want is WRL. WRL has a great app for studying for the exam, and they have all 3 sections. And sometimes it goes on sale, so look that up. But essentially, you can quiz. If you're interested in knowing more, ping me, and I'll send you a link to the place. It's just great. It's just great. That's what I used to get through my first 2, and I'm studying for my 3rd. So I'll just answer.
I thought you were going to comment on the fact that the discussion took a Witch Mountain turn.
I'm trying to ignore the Witch Mountain turn because Witch Mountain, right? I'm trying to have a Witch Mountain free millennium, a Witch Mountain free millennium. But
Yeah,
I don't think we're going to be that. We're not going to be that lucky.
So I did see some special guests that we all know and love. I saw Alan Hammock. I saw Steve Winter. I saw a lot of people that are all faces of folks we know and love. Trying to think of other stuff. I don't know. It's just a great show. It's a great show. It's well run. The person in charge of it has a real sense of what he does and does not want to see, and does or does not want people to have to screw around with. I think we have to give him all credit in the world for that, because last year they sort of hooped people and were trying to enforce parking, and that blew up into a lot of shenanigans. And when that happened, I think, don't pick a fight with a lawyer if you don't have to. I mean, just
behind the scenes, it was so delicious, the outcome.
Yeah,
because somebody tried to strong arm Alex, and it did not go well for them at all. It went very badly for them.
I try every day when I get up and set out not to step on my own dick, and yet there are some people who just are determined to step on their own dick. And you can do that. I wish you all the best, but it doesn't play well.
No, it was a case of somebody thinking they had leverage, and it turned out the leverage disappeared in 24 hours, and then they were begging Alex, "Please stay. What do you need? We'll do whatever you want. Free parking." Yes.
When he called the Milwaukee Tourism Bureau and left a message, didn't talk to anybody, left a message, and an advance team showed up the next morning to hear about the show and talk to them and talk about what Milwaukee had to offer. That was when somebody in Madison blinked, and that's great. That's what they should do. And it doesn't hurt that all the hotels were like, "What are you doing? Stop it."
Yeah, I think they heard from a lot of from heads of district heads of like Marriott and Sheraton and Holiday Inns, like, dude, this is our biggest weekend of the year, because it is. It's bigger than Badger games.
Again,
Alex says
old school advice: don't step on your own dick. I'm just saying, just don't do it.
Unforced errors are never good ones.
They're not.
They're not. It was such an unforced error too, and it just turned out. Well, I mean, it worked out great for Gamehole, and they got a new contract, and they got a lot of things they wanted, and and I think it's going to help the city a lot, because look, Madison doesn't need to lose a convention of that size. They really don't. That's just suicidal to lose that much money. 1 week in a year just pours into your city like that. And so cooler heads prevail. Let's just put it that way.
Well,
and
when reasonable people are involved versus somebody who's new in their job trying to make a name for themselves, you are mercifully free of some shenanigans.
This is good for anybody in business. If you're gonna make a badass stand, really know your opponent and make sure that they're not, oh, I don't know, a trial lawyer that's won awards and some of the biggest trial awards in Wisconsin over the past couple of decades. I mean, just know who you're going up against. If you're going to play, one-on-one basketball, make sure it's not Luka Doncic across there from you before you bet $1,000 that you can take this guy. You can take this Euro. That's a white guy. I can take him. And then he just proceeds just to grind you into dust. You've got to know who you're going against. And that's good advice for anybody in the business world. Know your opponent and don't try to big time it without, knowing what could possibly happen. You have to think at some point somebody happened to mention, I think he's got a law firm with his name on it, down the street. Like, oh, really? Because even though, we're gamers, we still get the, gamers. And we know gamers. Gamers are doctors, they're lawyers, they're professionals. I mean, they're not a bunch of goofy, overweight, white guys with their butt crack showing. I mean, though now some are. So I'm not gonna, don't get me wrong, some are. But that's not necessarily every person. When you think of a game convention, don't be fooled and think that, that's they're just a bunch of goofball nerdos that they don't know anything. I'm gonna go in there and big time the hell out of them. You got to kind of know what's going on. I mean, I can name off the top of my head, 5 lawyers that are and good lawyers that are all gamers. And then I know doctors, and like I said, I know a lot of professionals in this business, and it's going to be really hard to big time a lot of them, a lot of them are making more money than the people who probably talk to them at the city of Madison. They're making high 6 figures or more. And so, yeah, we still get that. We still get that prejudice that I think people think gamers are goofballs, and while some are, not all are. I'm afraid.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think I just the whole business got resolved within 36 hours last year, and it was a full court retreat. And when you showed up this year, you didn't have to dick around with the guys in the parking kiosks wanting to charge you every time you entered and exited, and Alex leveraged his position very well last year, and I think it was good.
And the parking thing is something that you don't. Oh my God, can you imagine the lines, Jim? If everybody's paying for parking on the way in, oh dear, it would have gone around the block and around, circled around the whole complex. And so that was one thing that Alex was very adamant about, is that we don't want to pay for parking because it's going to slow everything down. It's going to be a gigantic beat down. Not to mention, it's going to take anywhere from $8 to $20 out of everybody's pocket,
right,
having to
pay every single time. And that's what got so bad last year is that the new person at the facility, essentially every time they leave, they need to pay a new parking fee when they come back, which was, I think it was like $10.
They didn't understand how a game convention works. Game conventions work. It's not a regular type convention. That just shows the people who were trying to leverage it didn't understand anything about game conventions, about how they work. Game conventions, you come and go. It's not yes, some people stay all day, but also a lot of people will come, they'll play a game, they'll go to lunch, they'll come back after lunch, they'll play a game, they'll go to dinner, after they come back. And a lot of conventions, especially convention center conventions, people will go for one day. They'll go for one day, they'll stay all day, and they leave, and that's it. That's their convention experience. Gaming conventions are not like that. There's a lot of in and out there. You have to be prepared for all the in and out. And their plan was just ridiculous, having to pay in every time you went in and out.
Yeah. Anyway, so we should really talk about the picture that Tracy Hickman and Margaret White and Joe Manganiello shared today.
I was going to bring that up.
I just didn't hear it. I saw it mentioned in the chat. I'm like, what are they talking about?
Oh, you're going to want to look this up because it's a spectacular picture. It's a picture that, again, so as we have discussed before, WotC has a new president. As has been discussed ad nauseum, certainly since July, he's been on a bit of a tour to try to repair busted fences, burned bridges, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, found it. Okay.
And so
You found it? Okay, I was just going to send it to you. There you go.
this is a picture that speaks to a number of hopeful things. Now, I believe that when he met with Joe at Gen Con and said, "What can we do?" Joe laid out explicit things that he wanted. I was not there in the room, but I believe that Joe is Joe and can certainly make himself heard on what he would like. And so let's look at this picture. This is a good picture because Joe had laid a lot of groundwork for bringing Dragonlance to the small screen with something a la Game of Thrones. A lot of work went into it, and come on, the other duo shouldn't need an introduction, but having the original people involved with Dragonlance, I'm assuming that that's a picture taken at WotC. I've never been inside the WotC headquarters, but that's certainly a great picture and certainly bodes well. And I don't think Joe would be posting this on his social feeds if it didn't bode well for something coming our way that people would like to see.
I got this from Tracy's feed.
Yes, he shared it. Joe posted it originally, and then Tracy and Margaret both shared it after that.
And Tracy's comment is something is coming.
There you go.
Well, I told this story before. I went to GaryCon 2024, which like 2 weeks before that, WotC had issued their, we're not doing anything with Dragonlance, and so, never mind. And a surprise guest at that year, well, Joe was there that year, and a surprise guest was going to be Margaret Weiss. And I have no way of knowing this, but I have a suspicion that Joe and Margaret were going to announce something at the con. That's why she was going to especially attend. And I had not met Joe up to that. I had only talked to him on the phone. Gary had talked to him on the phone also, and I introduced myself. And you have never seen a longer, sadder face on a guy. He was bummed out that entire GaryCon. You could tell that, his dream had been yanked out from underneath him, and he was still trying to process it. And now he was also getting divorced from Sophie at the same time. So it's, double whammy, but he was not his usual happy-go-lucky self at all. And I think that, for them to do that, it's just one of many missteps in a long line of, as Jim put it, stepping on your own dicks that WotC just couldn't stop doing.
Hey, that hurt. I think I should do it again. Flop.
So Kim says there's also a photo with 5 of them, including Dan Ayub. Yeah,
Dan Ayub. There's Tracy and Laura, Dan, and Joe, and then Margaret. And so there you go. You got the super team right there. And so I think right there that says that the cooler heads have prevailed, or more intelligent heads have prevailed.
I think people want to make money, and they're going to quit stepping on their own junk, and I'm okay with that.
Get out of the way.
It's weird,
right?
It's weird that people got fired, and after certain people got fired, this popped up again. Almost like
it's almost like the people
maybe those people didn't want to do it.
Or we're also the people jumping up and down on the corporate penis. I can't believe this.
This is hopefully good,
right? Joe, I like Dragonlance, but I don't love Dragonlance,
right?
Tender, but Joe loves Dragonlance. Joe absolutely, Dragonlance is his passion, and I, to full credit where credit is due,
look,
we
said this about Dragonlance before. It's not just the why it's such a great idea for watching and why it's such a great phenomenon is it cuts across all levels of fandom. It's not just a gamer thing. It's a fantasy thing. The people that like Dragonlance, some people don't even play D&D or even know D&D. They just read the books because they like the books. And I've told this story a million times. I'll probably tell it a million times more. I had a blind date with a girl that I knew nothing about, was set up with friends, and we go out and have the date, and it's like, whatever, she's cute and whatever, we're talking, but there's nothing there, right? No spark. And so I go drop her off her apartment, go back there, and hey, you want to come in and get a drink or whatever? And she's got Dragonlance posters on the wall. I'm like, whoa, back up. Okay, what's going on here? Oh, you've heard of Dragonlance? I love Dragonlance. I'm like, well, do you play D&D? Well, no. I love the books, and then we're friends. It was Dragonlance poster on the wall. So there's somebody that had nothing to do with gaming, didn't know any game. And all of a sudden, she's like a 6 in my head. She becomes a 10 or maybe an 11 because she's got Dragonlance posters on the wall.
I feel like
but I mean, that's
and that kid is how I met your mother.
Oh, but it's a phenomenon that crosses many different fandoms, and this is why it's a real, it might have even been a better movie to make a Dragonlance movie than it was just to make a Forgotten Realms D&D movie, because you're going to bring in a lot of different fan groups when you do Dragonlance. And I think if they do it right, it's just like printing money, really. If they did it right and didn't screw it up, they're going to be printing money. And so I hope that they know what they're doing. I hope that it says a lot to me that they got the original group. They've got Tracy and Laura and Margaret, and if they could get Elmore and Larry somewhere, because Elmore is great friends, obviously, with those guys, and and then of course Joe is a super fan. If they play their cards right, and look, there's got to be some actors out there that love Dragonlance that would like, I'll be in a Dragonlance movie. That's the cool. When I was a kid, I loved Dragonlance. Get a couple of those guys in there with all their enthusiasm. I think you could have a huge hit.
Well, the thing is, Stranger Things is coming to an end, right? This is the last season of Stranger Things. We've played that out. Now this is the next IP that can push D&D without slapping you in the face that it's D&D. I mean, we know what it is, but like Mike said, a lot of people just know Dragonlance as a series of fiction. So it's going to be an interesting thing. Well, I would like to see what they do. I'm not going to say I'm going to like it, but I'd like to see what they're going to do with it.
I will say that I do trust the current people at WotC to develop this properly more than I trust the people who just got booted out the door. So that's good. I think that is good, because I do trust these people better. I think that they actually want to make money with their product, and they actually want to please fans, which I know, crazy concept, but I think that this is the group of people. Maybe it's not the best group you could ever have to make this kind of a move, but it's much, much better than the alternative, which was the people before, who seemed to have no clue about anything, how to do anything. And I say that as somebody, I like them, but
I think there's a very interesting interaction that happened out on social media this past week, where a blogger with less than 100 subscribers took a shot at Sandy Peterson and called him a tourist. Because it was the discussion about the terrible WotC illustration we talked about last week.
Right.
And this guy did a drive-by shooting. Is like, Peterson commented on it, and he's like, "Who are you? You sound like a tourist." And my God, the dog piling. The guy was just farming it for engagement, right? Because he's got less than 100 people that watch his unbelievable neckbeard show. And Sandy Peterson, if you want to accuse Sandy Peterson of being a tourist, and the best part is Sandy put up a thing like, "These are 4 games that I worked on," and the guy replied and is like, "Well, none of those are D&D. You don't know what you're talking about." Like it was classic comic book guy. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not part of our fandom, right? It was gatekeeping at its worst. It was the pits. It was absolutely the pits. And Joe, my understanding is Joe was never working towards a movie. He was working towards a live action show.
Right.
But the whole point of this was to do something like Game of Thrones, but using Dragonlance. And frankly, Game of Thrones is moribund. The new series is awful. It's tedious. I can only watch so many brothers and sisters humping each other. I'm eventually, I just get tired of this.
I gave up on the new series after the first episode. There's no reason. There's nothing calling me back.
They've done it. They did 8. It was 8 seasons, which took about 12 years. We've done it. Been there, done that. Let's move on.
Sure.
I think Dragonlance
this is
benefit.
Fresh. This gives everybody a chance to come to the board and do something new. This is the kind of stuff that Hollywood, it's like it, It's got dragons, but
and you've got great characters. You've got the brothers, who's one's the light, one's the dark. You've got the half elf guy that doesn't feel like
you got a hot, angry woman on a dragon. You got all the
grumpy old. You got a grumpy dwarf whose best friend is a wacky halfling guy. I mean, you just got all this stuff
murdered. All of them should be murdered ruthlessly over and over again.
and you've got a lot of pathos. A lot of the characters die during the original trilogy. Some more unexpected than others, and I think that that while it's not Game of Thrones, it's probably something that I think people would like to see. It's a more even I'd like to say it's a lighthearted fantasy, but it's not. It's really got some very serious, rough, dark parts to it.
Don't ask me where the draconians come from, kid. You don't want to know.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's got some dark. Like I said, and a couple of the main characters die during actually more than a couple. There's a couple.
Oh, the bodies are dropping left and right in that thing. Right. So, and I'm okay with that. Right.
Yeah. That makes great fantasy. Right?
So
no, you want great fantasy. It's like a great D&D game. You don't have a great D&D game unless a couple of people die during the game. If nobody dies, that means there's nothing at stake. And so the same thing with Dragonlance. And yeah, I think it would be great. The visuals are awesome. I mean, who doesn't want to see having a battle against a dragon with a bunch of draconians? I mean, there's just so many cool visual. Lord Soth, it's bad. I mean, he's like the Darth Vader. I mean, Lord Soth's badass. Kitiera's the bad girl. I mean, they've got everything's in there. Everything's in there. And so, I think if they did this right and they don't screw it up, and unlike the properties that George R. R. Martin was pushing, it has an ending. It's been finished, guys. It's been done. So you don't have to worry about, George R. R. Martin not knowing the end of his own saga because it's
even caring about the end of his own saga. It's never going to get completed. It's over. It's
still
done.
30 years and still is not finished. Still, it's been 30 years.
The people who are holding out for the last Game of Thrones book, I don't know how to tell you this, but it isn't happening, right? Like, it's just, he's got so much money. My favorite George R. R. Martin story is that he owns a house in Albuquerque. And when it came up for sale, he bought the house next door. And he bought the house next door for two things. Number one, to park his Miata there. Now, I've seen a number of pictures of George R. R. Martin in the last 20 years. George is not going to be getting into his Miata anytime soon. And the other is that he filled the house with his wargaming miniatures collection because he has a tremendous collection of painted miniatures, right? All these just intricately painted knights and so on and so forth, which is great. Like, I love that he has a house for his hobby. Good for you, George. But he's never going to write the damn books. He's got more money than he knows what to do with. He's older. He's in poor health. It's not going to get finished. And if you think it's going to get finished, I'm happy for you to believe that, but it's not going to get finished.
He's passed that project up over the last 20 years for many other projects. I mean, this is not a priority for him. He's done tons of other stuff. He's edited collections. He's done his wild card series. He's done a ton of. This is not a priority for him anymore, guys. If you magically put me in charge of properties, George needs to sell the U.S. Sci-Fi Channel, the Canadian Space Channel, and whatever the equivalent is in the UK. They need to get a consortium together to adapt the really, really great series he did of it's the guy Tough Voyaging. Tough Adventuring or Tough
Voyaging, where the guy flies the 20-mile long bio-war spaceship. All the pirates that come along with him die, and you could do the original launch movie, and then you could do a series of smaller movies, 2-hour movies after that. But Tough Forever Voyaging is a great series where you could do 6 or 8 movies out of this, and it could be really spectacular, and nobody has the sense to do this.
I just don't think, I wonder, because also he's been rumored for years to be doing Wild Card stuff, which is a superhero series, and he's never done anything with that. I just don't think he's motivated he's not a motivated guy. He's got, like you said, Jim, he's got millions. He doesn't really need to do anything. And some people, even though they have millions, still feel like they're, I mean, Tom Cruise doesn't need to act in another movie ever, but he just loves doing it. It's what he does. And that's what, he loves doing something.
Yes.
But I don't think George cares anymore. It just doesn't seem like, he's interested in doing anything about it, and it's sad to see that. And then because then you're hoping like, well, maybe if he dies, somebody will finish the books. I mean, that's where you're basically at now, is somebody might finish it if he passes away, because he's just not. That's just not important. It's just not important.
So Ty mentioned Larry Correia got ticked off at George. Literally created an idea for a fantasy series and did the entire series, and in the last book dedicated it to George R.R. Martin and said, "See, it's not that hard." That's the dedication, and it's wonderful. But you mentioned some of these other stuff. I know people who were crazy about wild cards, but they are the rare minority among my friends. Right? There's always the one person that's like, "I loved wild cards."
It's not a huge favorite of mine. I've read a book in it, and I'm like, okay, but it's it was an attempt to do a serious superhero thing way before people were really doing serious superhero type stories. And also, there's not a lot of superhero fiction, which seems odd, but think about it. There's really not. There's not a lot of superhero world fiction.
What's his name's just come out with a couple of books in a series. John Ringo. John Ringo has a quote unquote fact-based, sort of reality-based kind of superhero series that he's kicked off. I haven't read it. I've heard about it, but I'll probably look it up at some point. Ringo does a lot of really interesting research for his books that shows up in different ways. He has a zombie apocalypse series of novels, and he spent about a year beforehand doing all sorts of biowarfare research on how an actual virus might work. And it's pretty grisly, but entertaining. A lot of interesting stuff.
By the way, somebody's bringing up a danger of social media. So we said, we brought up the Sandy Peterson, you don't know anything. And somebody brought this up too. This week, we also saw somebody tell Rob Coutts he didn't know anything about D&D. There was also a pretty hilarious take where somebody told Chuck Dixon, they asked him if he'd ever read a Batman story before, because he had a Batman opinion. And for those who don't know, Chuck Dixon may have wrote more Batman stories than anybody alive. And somebody did, well, maybe you need to read a Batman story, Mr. Dixon, and you would find out, blah, blah, blah. And so I think we're seeing here what we just talked about earlier. You got to kind of know your opposition here. Before you just think you're just doing a badass takedown, you might want to Google the name. And then it's going to save you a lot of embarrassment, because that stuff's going to be posted and reposted and reposted and reposted. And unless you want the attention of being an idiot, which everybody's going to call you an idiot after that happens, it probably won't go well for you. So just be aware, if you're on social media and you feel like you just have to rip someone a new one, just Google their name first.
Somebody mentioned that Alan Dean Foster and Disney settled. Dean Foster and Disney settled. Once enough heat got turned on the mouse, they came to the table and they settled with Alan Dean Foster. And so Alan Dean Foster,
been a while, right? He
lost his wife a few years ago. Yeah. He was ill, but he and Disney did settle. They eventually sorted that out. Now, I don't know about the other authors that were due royalties from prior contracts, but I do know that Disney and Alan Dean Foster settled. Other interesting stuff. So I do think it's interesting. I do like the fact that people are pushing back sort of vehemently against the people that are like gatekeeping and tourists. And I don't believe you know what you're talking about. You're not a true fan of Dungeons and Dragons. I love that people are just hammer and tonging these people. I think that's just embarrassing. But it also shows, I think it also goes to show, it's sort of sad that a lot of people, their knowledge and their memory of the hobby is very short. I'm a guy who can't forget things, and I'm a guy who remembers a lot of stuff. I wish I didn't. I wish I could just evict some of it, right? But when this stuff comes up, it's very interesting to see people sort of take these positions and so on. And again, a simple Google search would have turned up who Sandy Peterson was. And one of the mainstay games of the last 40 years is the direct result of Sandy Peterson's work. I think it's embarrassing, right? Don't get me wrong. I come on the show and I talk about a lot of this stuff, but I try not to come from a position where I literally pull something out of my butt, having made it up on the fly. I can talk about historical precedent. I can talk about trending. I can talk about this stuff because I'm sure there are people who are like, whatever, Kitchen, you're a jackass. That's fine. But I can talk about the stuff I know. You'll not find me talking about the stuff I don't know anything about, because I'm at least smart enough to know when to say I don't know as much about this as I should before I just step on my own dick.
We're also pretty good about, in my opinion, I try to say in my opinion a lot and not let people think I'm a blowhard that, well, it has to be like this. And I'll try to throw that in there. Well, my opinion or my take on this is, because I'm not trying to make everybody, an example, like we had a lot of fun at Watts' expense last week with that really ridiculous artwork they posted that people, and of course you had people come along like, actually, you can play the game any way you want to play. You don't have to have people with swords and killing each other. If you want to have a wedding, that's a perfectly valid role-playing experience. Whatever. But look, you're allowed in life and in hobbies to not like things. Now, whether you don't like it gently or you don't like it in a mean way is up to you. But everybody is allowed to have their opinion. And the people who thought that artwork sucked are just as valid as anybody who did actually, there's a perfectly valid way to play. There's no right or wrong when it came to that. It's what you want to, how you feel about Dungeons and Dragons. For me, that didn't speak to me. That didn't speak to Dungeons.
Well, it spoke to me, but not in a good way.
It's more like it snuck up behind you and was whispering in your ear.
It was grunting wildly. But no, and so yes, for old schoolers like us, it was an eye roller. It was an eye roller and like whatever. But that doesn't mean we're wrong, and that doesn't mean we're right either. It just means it's, in our opinion, it didn't represent what we wanted to see out of D&D. And so I just think it's funny now, the backlash of the backlash, because the backlash was everybody going, oh my God, this is garbage. And then the backlash are all the get along gang, like, oh, we all, there's a place for everybody here. Everybody just join in.
Everybody likes the pastel beholder. It's what you want. Now, when just as a side note, when I put together Swords of Wizard Continual Light, and I got that original James Shields cover, which was stock art, and I got that first copy printed, and I showed it to my niece, and she was almost 7, and she held it up in her hand, and when she went with wide eyes, Uncle, this art sells. This is awesome. Okay.
She knew that.
We just had somebody enter the chat who will never put a pastel beholder on any of his products. Jeffrey Delaney. If you think a pastel beholder is showing up in Hyperborea, it's going to be his kickball.
I think Clark Ashton Smith had a pastel beholder in one of his stories, but maybe not. Maybe I'm just getting that wrong. I don't know.
Are you sure? Maybe that was ST
John. Maybe it's somebody else. Yeah, maybe it was somebody else.
I got nothing.
No, but you're right, Eric. Is that people look? We have certain images, and a lot of fun was made. And a lot of it was good natured. Some people that flew off the handle, but a lot of it was just good natured. That look, when I think of fantasy, I'm thinking Frazetta, the Death Dealer, one of my favorite, piece of artwork of all time. I'm thinking of the classic TSR artists. So there's certain images you get in your head. And so, when something like what was thrown out at us last week is thrown out there, I think it's perfectly valid and perfectly normal to have a negative reaction.
So Mike, are you referring to the short that I put up that people freaked out about? A small percentage.
Well, that's a whole different thing. You mean the AI created short?
No, the short that I put up with you talking about that piece of artwork got people so bent that they started posting about it, and I was like, okay.
Well, I was internet famous for a week, yeah.
But you know where you were internet famous on, though? The Frog God Discord server.
Oh, I thought maybe Rumble.
No.
Not
It's a
Rumble.
Frog God
Oh,
Discord
okay,
server.
darn it.
Yeah.
But look, it's a perfectly valid. It was a perfectly valid take. I'll live and die with it. It's a perfectly valid take to say that sucked. And the same thing when we were ripping that Dragonlance art a couple months ago, and we're just like, this isn't Dragonlance to us.
No,
we're allowed to think that, we're allowed to say that, and so trying to paint people who don't like that with a certain brush, because there were people that said some really outlandish and hurtful things because of that. And I'm not going to get into the reasons why, but but people just didn't like the artwork, whatever reason. It just didn't speak to us as something that represents D&D, and it still does. I still think it's dumb, and I'll say it's dumb.
Yeah,
I'll tell anybody it's dumb. I think it's dumb. And you're welcome to your opinion. You think it's kick ass, and hey, way to go, brother.
Take a breath.
So many thoughts.
Now I got to watch that short again. I didn't see the comments.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the comments on it.
That was a big issue on the Frog God Discord server, because apparently all the videos from this channel get shared there. So, by the way, thank you, Pex. Pex, you're no longer there. I have no access to what they receive. I have no control as to what gets shared over there, and I don't know if they have an admin anymore. So
it's not Pex. Pex has his own company now.
Pex left. But
yes,
he set it up before he left.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So they're just getting like, I don't share my shorts on social media. They get shared out on YouTube, and if the algorithm takes it, except for the Discord server for Frog God, because apparently anything I share on YouTube gets posted there. So
nice. Okay.
Yeah. Oh God, I feel dirty.
Well, I was internet famous in a very tiny niche of people for a week. That's awesome. That's all I can ask for.
And by the way, Mike mentioned this briefly last week. We were talking about this. We were just under 60. We had like 6,890 some odd subscribers last Wednesday. We're at 6,951. So we're hoping that by this time next week we're at 7,000.
Oh,
just throwing it out there.
That's what that's great. We were just talking about that. That's awesome,
yeah.
Man.
So it's been doing really well, and I really do appreciate everybody. So thank you. So
yeah, we just this channel and this phenomenon has grown organically. We have not. Eric has never bought a subscriber. He's never bought a, which people we know, people who have bought some subscribers. It's really easy to tell when you do. By the way, you're not tricking anyone.
You don't help yourself either, because
you don't help
the traffic,
because there's no engagement, no traffic. Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't really help you. It maybe makes you look good for to yourself, like, oh look, I now have 15,000 people. I had to pay for 10,000 of them, but yeah, you lose those people because they don't engage, and so your videos still have 35 hits, even though oddly enough you have 15,000 subscribers, and the people we're talking about know who they are. So
oh yeah, they'll make some vague Facebook comment or something like that.
I have 15,000 subscribers.
I want to thank everybody, and by the way, names of all the minions, the people that support this channel, I rotate them on the live stream, so they're on the bottom. And I got to say, Restream, thank you for giving us the ability to have transparency behind the text, so it doesn't smack you in the face and obscure what's going on. So I just got to say, Restream is doing well. Thank you much.
By the way, I'll tell you what. I had a kind of a deep dive this week back into the. Somebody had talked about the original, or not the original, but the John Carter of Mars movie that Disney had come out with. And I saw a really, really good video on, because I believe that came out in 2012, 2017. Yep. I can't remember. And that was, so their thesis was that was the beginning of the end of the Disney blockbuster, because it very famously did not make its money back, which was shocking at the time for Disney. But since then, Disney's had quite a few movies that have basically crashed and burned and didn't get the money back. Now, the difference is John Carter is actually a pretty damn good movie. If you read about it, though, there's many, many reasons why it failed, and most of them were administrative. It was not because of the product on the screen or the acting or the story. It was because it was almost built to fail. The people in charge.
Okay, I'm gonna fight you a little bit, but
Okay.
I'm waiting
Well,
for you
I
to
was just
go.
saying the people in charge of producing the movie, of promoting the movie, did an absolutely such an inept job. There's been a book written about it. They actually wrote a book that this was considered one of the worst marketing jobs of all time. Beginning at the title, which should have been John Carter of Mars, and not John Carter, who the F is John Carter, which was basically, it was just John Carter. And if you don't know who John Carter is, you have no clue.
Too many words, it obscures the title.
Now, there's a reason they took the of Mars out, by the way, which was a stupid reason. But that was kind of what was behind the entire one of the reasons the movie failed. But I like the movie. I like it quite a bit. I'm really sad we didn't see the next two movies in the trilogy. And I feel bad that got screwed up. And that's another property that if it had been marketed correctly, I feel, and had been promoted correctly. By the way, it got almost no promotion budget. That was another thing too. They had at the time, which was a lot of money, a $200 million movie that got literally no promotion, that they put no promotion in the basket. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I'll try to find the name of the book. The book talks about a lot of what happened and why they fought about the movie, why the promotional guys didn't know what they're doing, why the producer was an idiot and didn't know what he was doing. But that's another property that probably should have had a better ending. And unfortunately, we'll probably never see another John Carter movie in our lifetimes, because that's, fantasy and sci-fi are not necessarily the two genres that people take a lot of second chances on. You kind of have your one shot, and then when you screw it up, you're kind of done. So I'm sorry. And so, Jim, you wanted to say, what was did you not like the movie, or did you think it was?
I got a lot.
Okay.
So I gotta batten down the hatches here real quick. It should have been called A Princess of Mars. It should have been called A Princess of Mars, because that's the name of the first book. It's evocative. You can do a lot with it. Naming it John Carter, nobody gave a shit. It's a movie that suffered because of changing regimes at Disney. The incoming regime inherited it and didn't know what to do with it, and blah. I could go on and on about casting and all the stuff you mentioned. I think the cast tried their best, and hats off to William Dafoe, because I think he did the best job, frankly. And even then, he was a thark, and he was behind a bunch of CGI. I think there's moments in the book that capture some of it, but like Zodanga, the city that crawls around on Mars, whatever. The problem is that the movie should have been made a long time ago, because everybody's had a chance to lift from it. Star Wars, with the great scene of Luke looking at the suns, and all that kind of evocative stuff that was in that movie in 1977, has lifted wholeheartedly. I had a discussion briefly at GameholeCon with somebody about how Batman and Superman both robbed Doc Savage of so much of both characters is literally a ripoff of everything that came from Doc Savage in 1933. Fortress of Solitude, Scientific Detective, blah, 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 blah. I don't think that John Carter's troubled time at Disney is a one-off, and I'll tell you why. There's a great thing, and I think that what we were talking about earlier with the pastel colored WotC picture, once you have somebody that takes over an institution, the first thing they do is they kill it, they gut it, they skin it, and then they put the skin on and they pretend to be what it is they've taken over. And we all remember sitting in the movie theater and watching the very first Iron Man movie and going, holy crap, this is so much better than anything I thought it was going to be like. Because we'd all suffered the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie and all the others. And then they slowly built the building blocks all went into place for phase one. And everything was tightly integrated, and everything worked until You had a lot of things happen at Disney at once. You had this just desperate push to make more content for Disney Plus. You let the wrong people have keys to the kingdom. And so, for the perfect example, I saw the other day just a brief snippet from Thor Ragnarok. And you gave a director who is known for sort of you gave that guy a chance to screw up the great character. Like every woman in the world who is straight loved Chris Hemsworth without a shirt. All you had to do is make sure Chris Hemsworth was no shirt in the movie. And what did the guy do? He turned him into a beer swilling fat guy. And he took all the great elements that Kenneth Branagh set in the very first Thor movie, right? That you've got his three friends, you've got Lady Sif, you've got all this panoply of the Walter Simonson comic run. All of this is brought to life, and it's spot on. It's exactly what you want to see, right? How do you convey Thor, the god of thunder? And they nailed it in the first movie. They let Kenneth Branagh just run away with it on a limited budget. And as soon as they quit taking the characters seriously, as soon as they ripped down that wall and they just made it a joke, all the building blocks started to fall apart. It's why all the more recent Marvel movies have been terrible. The Fantastic Four is the Hail Mary to try to reboot it. But John Carter, I'm a guy that loved the books. I'm a guy that knows that a lot of the books need a little bit of updating if you wanted to bring it into a 21st century audience. And I see this time and time again with whatever property, like whatever you want to call it, right? But the theater kids, the outsiders, the tourists come in, they kill it, they skin it, they wear it, and pretend to be what it is that they took over. And it never works. It never works. Andrew Stanton had a chance. By the time John Carter was being made, Disney had instituted a policy that every movie, a big blockbuster movie, had to be shown to the Pixar Directors Corps. Everybody had to show their movie to the Pixar directors to take feedback, because the soul of better movies at the time was not at Disney Studios, it was at Pixar. And Stanton had come out of Pixar and he refused. He did not have that. He didn't take any director's notes from it. What they would have told him is take this 2-hour schlock and cut it and make it shorter and hit the touchstones that you need to do to make it better. I remember blogging before my son was born, or shortly after my son was born, that I had seen the news that Disney had optioned it. And I couldn't believe that at some point I might be able to show my only child John Carter, because my dad got the books from my grandfather, who read them new when he was a little kid. I mean, my family has 3-4 generations invested in this. And they whiffed it, and they absolutely whiffed it. And it's a terrible shame. It's a real shame. But this is what's happened in Disney, right? Look at Star Wars. Hey, they came in, they took the thing you loved, they killed it, they gutted it, they skinned it, and now the stuff that's come out with Star Wars on it over the last 4 or 5 years is absolutely a steaming hot load of garbage. I hear about representation, fine. The last character I had any sort of interest in was the guy who played Fandral in the Thor movies, the English actor Ray Stevenson. Ray Stevenson's character was interesting, and then he died. We will not have his character. We won't have his interesting character. The Mandalorian. It's somebody decided to watch all of the Baby Cart movies. They watched all the Lone Wolf and Cub movies and said, hey, let's do this in Star Wars. It'll be cool. Okay, it's not a bad idea, right? Except you don't have him pressing buttons to cause blades come flying out of the hover thing. But all of this stuff just goes to show how dreadful this terrible system is for making movies. And this is why I pray every morning. I get up and I pray to my snake cult. And I say to the snake cult, is this the year that I will see a greenlit King Conan movie? because Schwarzenegger's old enough to now be King Conan. Give me my King
Best
Conan.
comics, damn it.
Give me Conan on the throne.
Well, Jim, I'll tell you what's even worse than that. I am 62 years old. Conan has been a character for 100 years, and I'm still waiting for a Conan movie actually based on a Conan story, which we have not seen. And it's not like the guy didn't know how to write kick-ass stories. I've said for years, if what somebody needs to do is they need to walk into Hollywood, they need to take the short story Beyond the Black River, slap it down, and said, "This is our next Conan movie. Get to work." And I don't want this in the movie. I want to take what's in this story and put it on the screen. That is going to be our Conan movie, and that's what they won't do. Because everybody thinks they know better. Oh, no. He's this big, dumb barbarian guy that goes around chopping people's heads off. No, he wasn't. He was an intelligent. He spoke different languages.
So let's do a quick review review of franchises that have been destroyed. Aliens, right? I know you guys are watching the new TV show. I couldn't give a shit because
I gave up after the first episode.
They're unbearable. Terminator. My God, I actually watched the last Terminator movie a few weeks ago, and I'm still trying to wash it out of my eyes. Star Wars. Okay, we've talked about Star Wars.
By the way, Star Wars, the new Star Wars, the new trilogy came out. It started in 2017. Did really well. The last Star Wars movie we've had is 2019, 6 years ago. Remember, we were going to have a movie every year because it's just blowing up. It's so great. And that's what happens when you screw the pooch. Yeah, there hasn't been a movie since 2019.
So Star Wars is one. I marvel at how all the things I treasured as a youth have instead just gone down the river of obsolescence and so on. Star Trek, there has been a Star Trek movie in development hell forever. I saw the trailer and the long trailer for Starfleet Academy, and I don't even know what I'm watching. My
Strange New World isn't
terrible, but here I went to see Tron Ares. Okay, Tron was never an A-list franchise. It was never a B-list franchise. It was a C-list franchise.
Three movies over 50 years. I mean,
sure,
years,
but okay. I went to go see it, and before it, I had to endure the spectacle of James Cameron's new Avatar movie. Okay, it's the third of what's supposed to be eventually 5 movies, and of course, this time the new blue people have allied. They're the bad guys, and they've allied with the terrible Earth human blue guys, and now magically humans can be made to breathe the atmosphere of Pandora, so the kid doesn't have to go around with an oxygen mask all the time. Thank you, Away, or whatever. And I sat through the whole trailer and I was like, I've seen it. I've seen this scripted. I've seen this it's just
isn't this is the whole issue with Hollywood, Jim, is the fact that, you know, I cannot tell you when Christian and I, we'll go to the movies maybe twice a month, and we watch the trailers, and we'll and then after the trailer's over, we face each other. We either do this or that, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yep.
And I cannot tell you the amount of times we've been there, and every single trailer is a sequel, it has something to do with it. It's a TV show. It's a old movie. It's a remake. I mean, there's like zero original ideas. They're scared because movies cost so much now. They're so scared to have an original idea because you have a built-in audience. If you do a movie based on, let's say, Bewitched or Gilligan's Island, you have a built-in audience. Now, it's not a great audience. It's probably not going to be necessarily a super low audience, but you have an audience because you don't have to pitch it. Because if you're doing Gilligan's Island, everybody knows what Gilligan's Island's about. It's going to be a comedy. It's going to be funny. It's going to be so you know it. So, but the thing is, when you try to pitch a brand new property, they get scared. They get scared because they're like, what if nobody comes and sees our movie?
Well, and knows. The fear is if you come up with a brand new property, and I don't think we should go on too long about this, but let me give you an example of holy shit, that's a pilot that makes me horny for this series, right? And that is Lost. You watch the very first episode of Lost, and that thing just keeps coming at you, one character after another, right? You introduce the characters, you introduce all their foibles, right? You start getting an understanding of who these people are and so on. But the problem is the weight of trying to do this. They get bored, they get disinterested. I will tell you, I've said this before, the last TV show where really and truly there was a vision, it was 2 seasons. We're not going to screw it up. This is what I'm going to do. They offered him gigantic Scrooge McDuck amounts of money to do a 3rd season, and he said, I won't. And it's better than we deserve, and it's Gravity Falls on Disney Plus. If you haven't watched Gravity Falls, if you have Disney Plus, you need to watch Gravity Falls. The Dungeons and Dragons parody episode is perhaps one of the greatest episodes of television of all time. I cannot spoil it, but really and truly, it's this tightly woven show. It goes back and references earlier episodes, so you have to go back and watch them and go, holy shit, I missed that. It's like the Venture Brothers. The Venture Brothers started with this great idea, and they didn't know if they were going to get it on screen, but it lasted 7 great seasons. Then they cut their knees out from under them and they got a movie deal, and they sort of tried to wrap it up with a movie. But there's so much stuff in the Venture Brothers at the start that gets laid the foundation. And then in season 6, they go back to stuff from the first season, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I missed that. And so it's not impossible to do this, but you have to be focused, you have to be committed, and so on and so forth. And so going back to the idea that Joe and Tracy and Margaret might be working on a Dragonlance series, the good news is there are adults in the room. The bad news is those corporate bastards are out there, and they're just waiting to jump, kill, gut, skin, and wear whatever it is. And you have to hold their feet to the fire. I've given up on Star Wars. I've given up on so much of this stuff. I see a lot of what it is just, it's a pale imitation. It's an attempt to get you by saying we're Star Wars. And as Ty said in the commentary, somehow Disney managed to make lesbians, Force witches boring. I didn't think this would be possible, and yet they did. They made
not in my lifetime,
which is boring.
I think one of the things I think about some of my favorite TV shows of all time, and one of the things they pretty much all have in common is that they have one central driving force, which is usually a producer or writer, and he says, I want to tell this story. I want it to be this long, and I don't want to go past it. And a lot of times they get, like you said, Jim, they're throwing obscene amounts of money at them, and they're like, no, here's the story I want to tell. I want it to be over here, and here's what I want to do. And I'll give you an example. Breaking Bad. The Gilligan, the guy that wrote all the episodes, had the vision, had everything. He wanted it to last X amount, and that thing could have gone on forever. Obviously, it could have gone on forever, but he had a vision. He said, here's what I want to do. It's going to go here, 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 and then it's going to be over. And they begged him to continue it. And said, no. You can do this and walk and be alive. And there was I'm going to have to do spoiler here, because if you haven't seen Breaking Bad, watch Breaking Bad. It's one of the greatest TV shows of all time, top 10 all time. At the end, the main character dies because of his own machinations, and it's a perfectly valid ending. It makes sense. They came to him and said, what if he's not dead? What if he goes to prison? And in prison, he starts up his empire again. And he said, you have got to be fucking kidding me. We are not going to do that. It's over. He's dead. At the end of the episode, he is dead. And he made a point. There's a follow-up movie, a sequel movie, concerning one of the other main characters. And he makes a point within 5 minutes of the opening. that Walt White is dead. He was found dead, and he's making a point. No, we're not doing anything where he's alive. But people sometimes get swayed by these giant bags of money, and they say, well, this show should be only 5 seasons, but dang it, they're paying us so much damn money to do another season. And a lot of times you can tell that the actors aren't into it, the writers aren't into it, nobody is really all into it, because they had a vision, they had a plan, they wanted to end it. I think that's what happened with Lost began great, it ended tepidly because they didn't really have a good plan.
We got some stuff in the comments to address. Number one, what did I think of the Pretender series? The best thing in the Pretender series was Miss Parker, and hands down, I'm still the number 1 fan of Miss Parker in the entire world. Number 2, the Buck Rogers second season, is it a travesty that we should not speak of? I am proud.
Yeah, let's just skip that.
And the giant tall robot, because apparently we had a short robot, we needed a tall robot. And Wilma, God love her heart, the actress that played Wilma talked about how they used to just have to sew her into the costumes because they were so tight. And God love her heart, Erin Gray deserved better than that.
But I think I got exactly what I deserved out of Erin Gray in those tight costumes.
So we should talk about something we talked about last week and the week before. With a week to go on the Gygax Memorial Fund.
Oh boy.
Where are we? Eric, do you want to bring something up? Do you want to bring a chart up for the viewers?
Oh yeah. Hold on a second here.
Oh my God. Miss Parker isn't awesome. Miss Parker. Yeah, I'm going to need to go to the other room and smoke a cigarette if we talk about Miss Parker too much, because Miss Parker.
But by the way, real quick, a show that went too long was Blacklist. Great show.
Oh,
should have ended season 6, probably season 7. And they kept it going for 10 seasons. James Spader did the best work of his life, and I feel bad that he had to do 3 more seasons. It didn't matter. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, no, I as you can see, the soon to fill Kickstarter here is averaging about $2,400 a day, which is nowhere near going to fund. And it had a negative day.
Saturday.
Really large negative day on the 18th of about $7,300
on the 17th. They lost $7,300 on the 17th, which they've clawed back and they've got themselves out from that deficit. But if it doesn't trend upward if it doesn't trend up massively in the next week or so, I know that there's an effort on behalf of Paul and the others to try to get this across the hill. They've sent out some. I didn't get one. Surprise, surprise, I guess, after our video. But I would reiterate, number one, nobody on this show, everybody on this show loved Gary Gygax and has been affected by Dungeons and Dragons, and there's no question of that.
Yes.
Some of us, including myself, had discussions with Gail or someone operating Gail's messenger account, where over the years tried talking to her about the foibles and the self-inflicted wounds of the first decade after the Gygax Memorial Foundation began. We've covered all of this. We don't need to cover it anymore. If you are of a mind to throw money at the Gygax Memorial and you're happy with what the memorial is presenting, I think that's fine. I think there's some behind the scenes stuff that we've asked questions about or had questions about. The $150,000 donation that was returned. There's some other stuff. I said this a couple of weeks ago, and I'll say it tonight. I think you need to decide what you want to do about this. Nobody here is trying to influence you one way or the other. I think if they hit the funding, I think that there would be a bench, or I'm sorry, there would be a table with chairs.
There'll be a table.
There will be a table with chairs. A lot of good people have given this effort money over the last decade plus. We have some things to show for it recently since Paul took over, and I think that's great. I think everybody needs to decide what they want to do about this, and that's a uniquely individual decision. If it somehow manages to raise what's the amount they're at right now, Eric? They're at 52,000.
They're at 50. Yeah, they're at 50. Let me actually have it. They are at 52,161 of a goal of 150.
Sure. So we'll see what happens. Nobody on this show, Mike, Eric, or myself, want to see this fail. We simply, I mean, I don't want to speak for the other two, but I simply feel that all the things that have come before are the things that are hanging on this effort now.
Yeah.
And I think that inertia, trying to shed that, Paul's made a great effort to try to shed that inertia, but I think it's been tough. I think it's been very tough to get out from under the shadow of the first decade. And that's unfortunate because Gary deserves better.
I want to bring one thing I want to say is that, and I've told you guys this before, and I've said this before, is that I hope, I don't have anything against Paul. I don't have anything against the fund. I just think there's a lot of things that sabotage this. I think Paul would do very well to take this as a learning experience and say, okay, here's what we tried to do. It didn't work, but and I think it would behoove him to look at the money that was donated and say, is there something we can do in the $10,000 to $40,000 range that will give some credibility to the fund? Do something, make it succeed, and then say, okay, now we can build on this. I just think it was a big ask. $150K is a big ask considering the history of the fund and what's happened and a lot of the bad feelings with the fund. I just think it was just not a good ask.
If this Kickstarter had been put forward 10 years ago, when Kickstarter itself was a money machine where people didn't ask questions, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, that looks awesome. Yeah, I'll fund Far West. Yeah, I'll give him $50K. Yeah. That was what Kickstarter was. And then people started asking questions when things funded and didn't finish. So now when you have a project, a fund that's been trying to get this done for over a decade, your Kickstarter takes upon the baggage that you have accumulated over that decade. And it's hard to get people to, by the way, give money when you're not really getting anything tangible. And that's another thing that, people generally want something tangible when they're asked for money. Here you're being asked to donate. And I'm not saying it's not a good cause. I'm just saying it's a cause that people have been hearing about for over a decade. And I think it's lost a lot of momentum. Momentum should have been used a decade ago.
I think also, I'm trying to find a delicate way to put this. I think the fact that the fund lost $150,000 was just kind of skipped over a lot when people would ask, well, where's all the money that was put in before? And the official reason was, well, it was all used for research that led to this latest project. And I think a more detailed reckoning of what happened to the funds would have helped, because a lot of us were not pleased by that or convinced
there was no transparency before Paul came along.
Yeah.
Paul did bring transparency, but there was a lag in getting the last 2 years of tax returns up on the fund site, and that would have shown the money that was returned. Again, it's in much better hands in Paul's hands than it was prior to that. There is no question.
But it's all the baggage, right, Eric? It's just there's so much baggage connected with that the name and with who ran the fund before that really you have to sit there and go, would it be worth it just to wipe it out and start from scratch and not have all that extra baggage? Because it's so hard to explain that away. And I know Paul has done his best to try to explain it away, but you're left with the fact that at one point you had this much money in the fund, and then at this point you don't. And so what of tangible benefit happened with that fund? And the answer is really nothing. Nothing happened with it. And people get upset about it. Everybody that donated, earlier, I know a lot of the people, myself and others included, who were loath to give more money to the fund because we'd already given money, and that money had not done anything. And I think they were stuck in that kind of that no man's land where, well, this is a cool project. I mean, it looks great. The project looks awesome, but there's just so many nagging questions at the back of your head, like, well, last time they had a big giant pile of money, nothing really happened. And yes, we realize that's not Paul's fault, obviously not Paul's fault. But it's just still there. It's it's like being a fan of the New York Jets, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how much convincing would you need to see at this point to know that you have a good Jets team? A lot. If they win 4 games,
stop hitting me in the nuts, man.
If they win 4 or 5 games in a row, it's not gonna. You're just gonna say, whatever. It's just the Jets. If they somehow got in the playoffs, you'd be like, it's the Jets. I mean, they would have to actually do something to get you excited, and that's kind of how this has become now. Yes, they put in a bench, which is great. I mean, hey, that is awesome. That's more than anything that was done the first 10 years was a bench. But still to this day, probably the best known artifact to Gary is the brick in front of the fountain, that was put there by his kids. That I don't know how much it cost, but it couldn't have been a lot. That's where everybody goes. That's where people leave dice, where people take pictures. How many pictures have you seen about somebody sitting next to that brick? I've seen.
Well, they also leave dice at his gravesite.
Yes,
and I just, all of this is just, it's tough. It's really tough. Yeah. It hurts to talk about. I think a lot of people, and don't get me wrong, the Wizards produced reprint volumes. They did a terrible job of reproducing the original books. Whoever it is that was at Wizards worked on those and copied them and did the reproductions. It's the S1234 collection book and so on. They're abominable. People should have been fired for how bad a job they did.
But now here's an interesting thing. Paul, in a recent comment, I believe on Facebook, said that the fund recently got a check from WotC for like $200 from the reprints. Because I've always wondered, that statement is still in the PODs and the PDFs that you can get from drive-through. So apparently, WotC is still giving a portion of those sales to the fund, which is
that's great.
I was.
But they're still terrible books.
I'm not saying otherwise. I believe me. I bought a set. Rachel won a set at North Texas, and I wound up gifting one of those sets away because, how many reprints do you need? Come on.
So we got a week to see where it all ends, but let me change tack. I want to talk about something I heard about yesterday. So I had mentioned at the top of the show that I'm actively involved in a number of conventions, auctions, and so on and so forth. But we got an update yesterday, an indirect update, and then I had a phone call today, this evening, with my point of contact with Children's Wisconsin. So if you were at GaryCon last year, you might remember that we had 2 of the kids from Children's Wisconsin that came and spoke before the auction. And one of them is a little boy named Oliver. I'm sorry, he's 13. He's not a little boy, but Oliver is 13 years old. And Oliver went from being a happy-go-lucky 13-year-old boy doing what 13-year-old boys do. And he caught an infection and woke up paralyzed and unable to breathe. He essentially had to be, I don't think they life flighted him, but they were almost traking him in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. And so when Oliver spoke, you can probably find pictures of me at the GaryCon auction last year. You'll see at the start of the auction, I had to hold the microphone for Oliver to talk because Oliver was paralyzed from the neck down with the infection that hit him. And I got an update yesterday indirectly that I called Dave Thorpe at Children's Hospital about, which is that Oliver is now walking.
Wow.
And you can't really understand how unbelievable that sentence is when I'm holding the microphone for this kid who's just trying to get through how Children's Hospital has helped him. Oliver goes for therapy 3 days a week. and his mom and dad are unbelievably decent. Oliver does not have full motion or full range yet. He's still every week working on recovery, but he's getting there. And Oliver has been doing fantasy artwork. Oliver has been, now he can't use his hands. He's essentially using a stylus, but he's drawing pictures. We're trying to work on possibly having Oliver have a picture for the auction. But Oliver's going to be back at the Gary Kahn charity auction. And I'm probably going to talk to Oliver's mom in the next couple of days. This stuff happens more often than not. Kids who get sick don't always have the kind of happy-go-lucky experience you want them to have. It goes the other way, and it gets dark, and it gets dark pretty quick. But Oliver, this 13-year-old kid, is absolutely pushing and pushing and pushing to try to get ahead of where he is, and he's making progress. And so I can't tell you, like, when people are like, why do you do this? This is why I do this, right? We raised $92,000 for Children's Hospital of Wisconsin last year. That's the organization that Oliver benefits from. So if you want to, I see some people asking, if you wanted to make a donation, you could go to Children's Wisconsin. You could see that I'm sure they have a fun way to donate. And you could say, this is for Oliver, who was at Gary Kahn. That would probably be enough, and they would be happy to see that. We're working very, very hard behind the scenes to make Gary Kahn's charity auction a barn burner. I have a meeting every 2 weeks where we're working behind the scenes to make everything work right. But it's not very often that I get one of these sort of little tidbits that float across the wires. But when I talked to Dave at Children's Wisconsin tonight, he and I both. I saw him this past week at Game Hole. We talked a little bit, but when I heard this yesterday, I reached out to him. And if you think you have problems, if you think you have things going on in your life, I can assure you that you really get some perspective. I've had a bad leg that I've been working with for 2 weeks and a knee that doesn't want to work. I have not woken up in the middle of the night screaming because I'm paralyzed from the neck down, and I almost died on the way to the hospital. And for that boy to be back up and moving around is simply staggering. So that's the last thing I wanted to sort of bring up before we get to our usual sort of closeout. But all of you who have supported whatever the efforts are we've done at charity auctions, whether it's North Texas, if it's Game Hole, if it's Gen Con, whatever. I've done online auctions and so on. This is the reason you do this, because every once in a while there is that glimmer of hope that comes through, and without people's work and without people's donations and so on, it just doesn't happen. So
thank you, Jim.
I'll find the link on Children's and Eric can put it up in the comments.
Yeah, and I'll also make sure that we share it out in the postings for this channel. So there'll be a permanent record of it, so to speak. So, Mike, you're going to regale us with your musical...
Yes, we have some newbies. Well, from last few weeks, I'm still on Centromatics, Always Inconvenient. I am still on classic Steely Dan album, Asia. I have...
I'm sorry. I just love that I love that you fixate on an album and it just stays there for a while, right?
It just does. And I can't, it's hard to get rid of it. I got 3 new albums though. Now, this is a group that I heard a song on, Sirius FM. I was listening to one of the stations. Never heard anything about them. They're a group called the Eyeliners. They're a sister band that did rock they've done 4 or 5 albums in the last 15 years. It's just really good, hard. All the songs come in about 3 minutes, and they rock out. They're a really good band. And so I just heard one of their songs. I thought I might like it. I enjoy the album. This is their last album. I may get their first 2 or 3 because I really enjoy that one. This is a couple of older ones that I really like. Social Distortion. I'm a huge Social Distortion fan. This is their Somewhere Between Heaven and Hell album. if you know what Social Distortion is, they got a lead singer, punk, he sounds really gravelly, got a gravelly voice. They rock out loud, noisy, just really, really good kind of rockabilly / punk music. And I don't think I have one album of theirs I don't like. Their stuff is really good. And this is a classic. This is from back in the day. This brings me back to my first year of college. Pete Townshend's Empty Glass. This is a solo album. He came out with this. It's got some really Rough Boys, Let My Love Open the Door, Just a Little Is Enough. It's got some hits on there.
Does it have Athena? Is that the solo album with Athena?
No, it's not. Athena's not a social album. Athena was an actual.
Oh, that's right. It was a Who song.
Yeah, it was Who album. It was an album after it came out after this. But this is Pete Townsend just doing some different things. He does some rock. He does some ballads. I went through a stage a few years ago where I thought I'd pick up every Pete Townsend solo album because some of them aren't very well known. And I just think he's an amazing songwriter. He's probably one of the most talented musicians of the 20th century in that he could do everything. He could write, produce, sing, play the guitar. Bob O'Reilly's one of the first synthesizer rock hits. I mean, he just did a little bit of everything, and he's just a really great songwriter. So those are the 5 albums. Jim, do you have any?
I got 2. Well, I got a movie and something else. So let's start with, every decade Hollywood discovers car racing, and it leads to things like Le Mans. It leads to Jim, not Jim Rockford. What's his name? Garner. James Garner's amazing documentary of him taking a 3 cars racing all across the U.S. It leads to things like Days of Thunder. But every once in a while, there's always like the A movies, and then there's like the B movies. And, for every Days of Thunder, you have to put up with something like Viva Las Vegas, which really you watch it just to see the old cars. But let's talk about F1. Let's talk about F1, which is the Brad Pitt Apple movie that came out of nowhere and is essentially Top Gun in F1 cars. They did a great job of filming this. They put IMAX cameras on actual F1 cars and put them out in the mix. They worked with Formula One to really try to get this right. Brad Pitt is doing exactly what Brad Pitt needs to do. He's hunky. He's hot. Women want to see this. He's bare-chested at some point, and he's no F's to give, right? He's perfect as the guy who had the bad accident in his early career and has just been bumming around ever since. He's got a great teammate and the guy that hates him but has to work with him, who's the young and up-and-coming F1 driver. There's all sorts of amazing cameos from all the current F1 drivers. There is some really hysterical in-jokes. Of course, the slimy guy we all grow to hate by the end of the movie is, of course, an F1 tourist. He wants to kill F1, skin it, and wear its suit. And he immediately says the thing that gives anybody who loves F1 the cringe, which is, I loved it when I discovered it on Netflix. So, yes, if you watch Drive to Survive, that's fine. We won't judge you, but you should watch F1 because it's the closest you can really get to like what it must be like. I saw this. I knew I was going to have to get it. I'm a big fan of it. Love it, love it, love it.
I saw it. I liked it too. There's nothing objectionable in the movie.
No,
it's just one of those fun movies. You can see it with the whole family. It's a really fun movie.
And the moment he meets the love interest, you're like, they're going to bang. And before the movie's over, they bang. And every woman who's at the movie is like, they're finally gonna bang. You're like, yep, I get it. So I totally get it. But I want to mention something else, which is Cowboy Bebop. Now everybody's like, what? Huh? What?
I've heard of it, but I don't know anything about it.
Amazon had a crazy sale a few weeks ago, and I bought a copy of Cowboy Bebop on dirt cheap. Now, I bought the complete series, which is what you ought to. Like all things in Japan, they do these little series, and then they craft it together, and then they do a theatrical release. Get the original series. Netflix famously did a live-action Cowboy Bebop, and before it was even, like, cooled off, They canceled the second season and killed the whole project, which frankly was a bit of a mistake. It wasn't great, but this is an interesting fusion of jazz and anime and a group of ne'er-do-wells who come together. It's well regarded as one of the best Japanese anime series. I agree with this. I think it's solid. It's probably my number 4 or number 5 favorite anime series. There's a lot of Gundam before it, and there's a lot of Gundam after it, but Cowboy Bebop absolutely holds its own. Why would I recommend it? Really and truly, I like every time somebody's like, I don't need to see all the tentacles, I'm good. There's a lot more to Japanese manga besides tentacles, and Cowboy Bebop is a classic example of that, right? Earth is no longer inhabited for reasons, and everybody's out in space, and there are shenanigans, and I don't want to give any of it away, but you could do a lot worse than to watch Cowboy Bebop. It's an interesting series. After you watch the original anime, it makes watching the live action just a little bit better. And Netflix, I think, really made a mistake because they had a good thing, but they killed it because they listened to the wrong people, which is Netflix. Netflix makes the same mistake that Fox did. Remember when Fox canceled Space Above and Beyond? You bastards. Remember when Fox canceled Firefly? I could care less, but some of you do.
Yeah.
Dollhouse, the list goes on and on and on. Netflix has got the same guy from Fox making the same decisions that he did 20, 30 years ago over. It just kills me. But my 2 recommendations are get F1. It's a lot of fun. My guess is they'll put it up on Apple TV in time for Thanksgiving so you can show your grandma how hunky Brad Pitt is with his shirt off. Mm-hmm. And Cowboy Bebop, look for it. Check your libraries, et cetera, but it's a great series and good fun.
There we go.
Yes, we saw F1 at the theater. It's good. Jim's right. The whole family can watch it. Even the Brad Pitt banging scene's not too bad. You can.
I mean, they
it's artful. It's
artful.
Yes,
it's very artful. But as soon as they meet, as soon as they're across the table, you're just like, this is a cobra and a mongoose, and they're circling. And when they get to grips, it's going to be on like Donkey Kong.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Sorry, Eric.
God help me. You see, like Mike had to turn off his camera for a second. I'm not even gonna go there.
I was getting a little verklempt thinking about Brad Pitt all.
Huge thank you to Agile Monk for gifting 5 memberships and tipping the show. Thank you, sir. A gentleman and a scholar. For those that don't know, this past Sunday, Joe the Lawyer, Joe Block, and myself launched a new live stream Sunday nights, 9 p.m., first and third Sunday night. So the next one's going to be in a week and a half. But you can go and take a poll to tell us what you want the next episode to be about. So that's in the post section of this channel, the Greyhawk Grognard channel, Joe the Lawyer's channel. Stuff the ballot box. We're all taking votes. Feel free to stuff it if you really care. Just saying. Other than that, live streams the next 3 nights. Okay, yeah, 8 o'clock. You know the deal. Thanks to Mike. Thanks to Jim. Thanks to the very lively chat group. Oh, my God.
Extremely lively tonight.
You folks really do make this a joy to do. All right. Next time you all see me, I'll be back home in New York. So you won't have this lace curtain behind me. So go figure.
All right. Okay, next week we've got to talk about. Somebody brought up Pamela Anderson. Next week, we need to talk about Pamela Anderson and Hard Boiled and how it's actually a reskinning of Casablanca.
Okay. Well, that's going to be interesting. All right, folks. Good night.